Hello everybody, this is Lee Phillips, Journey of Truth. Today is Tuesday, February the 24th. It is 11:47 a.m. in the morning, and we are here at the Historic Rock Gym and Convention Center in Loganville, right here off of Main Street, and we are here for the Codapalooza meeting that they're having from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock, and we'll be recording it and creating our historical document. And I don't believe there's going to be any other recordings from the city, not like we usually do from the council chambers. They don't have anything set up here, so I'm going to try to get things the best that I can. And I can tell you there are some sound issues inside because of the echoes. This was a gymnasium, and so I hope that it turns out okay. I'm not happy with my sound from the city council chambers last night, but in any case, we are gonna come in and find us a spot to where that we can see what's going on. Now, the meeting that we had last night was supposed to take place here in the gym today, but the heaters were not working properly, and so now they've got the heaters working, and it feels pretty good and toasty in here right now. So I don't think anybody's going to be cold, and my understanding is we're going to have a sit around the table here. And so once everybody gets kind of organized, then I'll try to relocate and readjust so that I can get y'all the best video that I can of what's going on concerning the way that our new codes are going to be written for the growth of our town. Now, this is open to the public, and I encourage that if you do not participate this year, start participating in the city functions that involve the public, because these things are so that they can get our input, so they know what to do. So we need to give them our input and talk about things so that they will understand and know how we feel about our town and how we want the growth to go. Because if you don't come to the meetings and speak your mind and make your voice heard, then you can't complain when something goes in that you don't like or you think is inappropriate. Well, you never went to a meeting and voiced your opinion about those things. So this is the time to do it. And there's going to be a meeting tonight from 6 to 7, and then tomorrow, I believe also tomorrow afternoon and evening. So, and then they'll have their closeout on Thursday, I believe. So they're supposed to get started at 12 with the conversation, so we're going to just kind of hang out. I know all y'all just love my long videos because I don't do no editing, but you know, sometimes you might hear something in a conversation that once the moment's gone, it's gone. So Looks like we're getting close to getting started here.
Recording in progress.
We're live, so we're gonna be zooming, creating a Zoom that people can watch, and so speak into the speakerphone. You pick up it's fine. We don't have video or anything. Just the audio. Great. All right. Well, good. Well, thank you all so much for coming. So I'm Brian Wright. I'm the principal of Town Planning and Urban Design Collaborative. Some familiar faces in the room here, but for immediate people, we are working on doing a zoning ordinance update, and this is the meeting to talk about housing and neighborhood character. The format of these meetings is informal, so we're just chatting. We're here to pick y'all's brains, taking notes and just listening. May have a few questions just to get y'all going, but really it's just to give you all a forum. Talk to us and tell us some things about, in this case, housing and neighborhood care. So we always like to start by introductions. So around the table, just say who you are and if you represent a group or organization or.
I'm Anna Blevins. I'm with TCDC and project manager. Oh, I'm Melanie Long. I live downtown and I'm also on city council. And I'm a local business owner.
In the back.
Lee Phillips,
Just Lee.
Journey of Truth.
There we go. Journey.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Oh, by the way, remind me to ask you about your tripod later. I've been in the market for one, and I see you landed on one that's quite impressive. So.
It was a gift from my dad.
Okay.
Your name, Pam Wolf on city council.
I'm Brad Callender, I'm from your neighboring city of Monroe.
I'm Lexi Robinson, I'm also from City of Monroe.
Stephen Jacobs, City of Monroe. They did our code.
Yeah, we're former clients, so
That's
they,
why we picked it, because they did so good in Monroe.
that's right. Yes, thank y'all for letting us do good work.
Brian, that's the number of TUC. Phil Griffin, resident.
Hey, Griffin.
Michael Jordan, fire planning zone.
Zeb Barbie, just popular.
All right. Well, good. Well, so we had the kickoff meeting last night where we talked about sort of high-level planning principles and all of that. We talked a little bit about housing and neighborhood character. Some of the topics that came up that we'd like to dig into a little bit more were, just housing needs, like what's needed here, what preferences are. We heard about challenges of aging in place in the community here, which is not unusual. We heard the desire for estate homes and then in air quotes $1 million homes, so it's nicer, more expensive homes. And then we talked a little bit also about people downsizing at some point, and then younger demographics that can't afford the $1 million estate homes at this point, but they're good for the energy of the community and long-term sustainability and vitality of the community. So, what do we need to know about housing and neighborhood character in more detail beyond those high level?
You
Yes.
want a suggestion?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
My suggestion is not a popular one.
Okay. Apartment complexes.
We need to stop building subdivisions with cul-de-sacs.
Okay.
There should be dead-end streets that when more property is incorporated into the village, they can be tied in rather than another circle of homes.
Yeah.
That's my own project.
Okay, I've got to dig into this more. So, as a planner, like that's normally what we're talking about these days, the cul-de-sacs of, cause a lot of the traffic problems you all have here when you don't connect neighborhoods. You all, roads have to get off, all the cars have to get on the collectors. How did you come to this conclusion, this unpopular, idea?
I grew up on Long Island, New York.
Okay,
We had streets,
yeah,
very few cul-de-sacs.
yeah,
We had almost zero traffic problems where I live,
yeah,
a small town.
sure,
And, we had friends on streets, we didn't need to have a cul-de-sac to play on. We grew up with friends that lived on this street or that street.
Did you have like neighborhood parks or anything like that?
Yes, we had neighborhood
And that's where you
parks.
go to play?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or we had a big backyard, and all the kids came to our house to park,
yeah,
because we had a side yard, we played ball.
right,
We played in the street. We
yeah.
had cul-de-sac.
Yeah, cul-de-sacs, are definitely a modern invention, more modern, and, cause back in the day, people would say, well, why in the world would you not connect the street? How are we gonna get from here to there?
Yes.
And then at some point, sort of the real estate, industrial real estate complex, the realtors, started selling this idea of safety and seclusion and, sort of an enclave, but studies have shown, to your point, that people who live on a cul-de-sac have a handful of community connections, and those who live on streets that are connected have a much greater number of connections with other people. Some people would say, ooh, that sounds awful, I want to be connected with other people, but a lot of people would like that.
Everybody knew everybody.
Yeah.
I couldn't get away with it.
That's right, that's right, yeah. Well, and strangely too, they also have studies that show that while everybody sort of touts the safety, functions of cul-de-sacs, they're actually less safe for children because kids have this sort of false sense of security that there's not through traffic, but then somebody comes out of their driveway and they're not looking, or they've got bushes there or whatever, and next thing you know, the kid gets hit. I was surprised when I saw that statistic, so thanks.
And there's a bigger, chance of being burglarized if you're on a cul-de-sac, because it's private and they can get away with more.
Yeah,
They can kidnap your child and nobody knows.
watch out for that.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, anybody else have any hot takes?
Or are we talking about the looks of the homes or the communities?
All of the above.
Okay, because one of the things that's a big sticking point for me, and I'd like to hear from everybody else, is the roads are too narrow and we have too much on-street parking, so it looks trashy. The fire department can't get through. So I would like to eliminate on-street parking, however that is. We've been working the last few rezones we've done. We've required condition of zoning to have really long driveways so that it accommodates all the vehicles that live there. So I don't know if there needs to be a formula that if this is a 3-bedroom house, your driveway needs to be so many feet to accommodate the number of drivers. But I think having the roads an extra lane wide with maybe on-street parking allowed down one side, that leaves you 2 complete lanes of traffic. Because one needs to go no further than go down here to Terra Commons, to that townhouse community. You can't even get through over there. And it's just it's not safe, and it just looks trashy.
All right, so let's dig into this. This is one of those things in the world of planners that is, basically what you'll see with transportation engineers, planners, urban designers, trying to create more walkable, safer streets and all that. One of the things that people are doing these days are what we call road diets. So you can imagine it's skinnying them up as opposed to making them wider. And so I'm glad you, because I was about to ask you for an example of one of the ones that looks trashy. So we're gonna go take a look at Terra Commons. Just for what it's worth, when a road is wider, there are studies where they show direct correlation to the width of the road and the speed that the cars drive, right? And so what we'll find is cities will have, they'll be getting calls for speeding all the time. We need to have a policeman here, or we need to have a speed bump, or whatever. And so then they go in and retrofit and put in these speed humps or whatnot. Typically, the first people to complain about the speed humps are the people who live right by the speed hump, because they're the ones who have to hit it every single time. And what we always think about it as sort of these traffic calming sort of retrofit measures is that that's a road that's not designed properly in the first place, right? So when you think about some of these, and I talk a lot about it when we're referring to character, I mentioned last night, places that people love, places that you might go on vacation, you visit, you see in pictures or on people's Pinterest or in a coffee table book. A lot of them might have, is that it? I see what you mean.
You talking about the drive,
Yeah.
but when you're talking about what you're talking about, you're talking about like the roads that have like the island down the middle and the lanes are two separate lanes?
Sometimes, but like you'll see in like a lot of these really charming historic towns and villages, they do have on-street parking. Their roads are very narrow. No one would describe them as trashy looking. But the fire department's like, ugh, those roads, yet they somehow always make it through. They just have to be a little bit more careful. They take it slow. You know, used to, the fire trucks would, they would go as fast as they could. And since, you know, the past, I don't know, 20 years, I'm making up that number, but I've started hearing more and more from fire departments that they've realized that hurrying actually is more dangerous than just going at a reasonable pace and getting there. The sort of the window of saving lives and keeping things from burning down is not measured in seconds typically. I mean, yes, ultimately it is, but it's not sort of statistically. And so they don't speed now, and so trying to get through some of these places. But what we'll also see is like we're working for the city of Charleston at one point, and obviously, you know, if you've ever been to Charleston, they have these fantastic, historic, beautiful streets, but very narrow, some of them. And then other areas, it's very suburban. You know, looks like any street y'all got out here, they don't put that on the webpage, but they have that. And so, I said, what do you want to do? You know, and I'm like, well, we have that other fire truck. We have a little fire truck for downtown, and then the big fire truck for everything else. So we'll need to think through that, because when we hear people in your comp plan talking about walkable and safer and more pedestrian friendly and bike friendly and all that stuff, if we do widen, it can work against those goals. But the pictures, the street view that I'm seeing here, the place you're just talking about, is not anything that we would recommend doing either. So it's.
I mean, even the new rental, well, not the rental neighborhood, but the new neighborhood, Eleonora, it's a new neighborhood
Yeah,
up the street. You go through there, the driveways are this long and everybody's parked in the street. It's just a poor look.
Yeah, and that's one of the things too, when you, and I mentioned this last night, when I showed that, you know, this building says people live here, this one says cars live here, and the one where cars live here, you know, have to drive around in front, there's nowhere for anybody to park except for, you know, in front of it, and half the time, if it's pulled up close enough, now they're parked across the sidewalk, if they even have one, a sidewalk that is. And so pushing that garage back, like you'd see in the historic homes, gives them an opportunity, if it's even, you know, if you're even parking off of the street versus an alley, you can drive past the house. We did this really cool study one time where a developer was complaining, I don't want to push the garage back more than 10 feet. And I was like, 10 feet, that doesn't really help much, you know. Even if the house is set back far enough that you can park and not drive it to go over the top of the sidewalk. And we built a 3D model and we showed what it looks like from 10 feet versus if you push it back even just 20 feet. And basically, when I flip back and forth between it, and if you look down the street, it looks like the parking lot on the 10-foot version, because the cars have to stick out in front of the house. On the 20-foot version, they can at least be even with the front facade of the house
detached garages?
Sometimes.
Requiring detached?
Not requiring, but sometimes, a lot of times you'll see, you'll have basically, you can drive past, and then either turn and, the garage will be side loaded, or it can basically be offset and connected still. But a lot of places do have the detached garages, not just the historic home, they did a lot, but even new homes today have them as well.
You know, the neighborhoods aside, which is a good point, our main street, which is, seems to be more of a focus now than it used to be, you know, everybody wants lovable, walkable, and whatnot. We have a problem with 18-wheelers going down. I don't know that anything can be done about that. I mean, that's a GDOT problem.
Yeah,
But that is really tearing our, in my opinion, tearing our downtown up
yeah.
as far as walkability and just many other things.
Yeah, we have them in downtown Franklin, the 18-wheelers, but I don't feel like there's tons that come down, and so I'd be interested in know sort of like how many come through here. And it is annoying when they come, because they'll like, there's a coffee shop at the corner where there's a light, and they'll get hung at the light, and if you're sitting there, you have to literally just wait for them to, the light to change, because you can't hear them idling, they're so loud. And of course, they run old buildings and stuff, and just the size of them, because y'all's Main Street is only really one-story buildings too. We've got at least 2 stories, so the sort of height to width ratio, and then the trucks don't seem so big.
And they're right up next to the sidewalk, so if they vary off the beaten path just ever so slightly,
Yeah,
we're in trouble, or somebody walking that path is in trouble.
yeah, y'all's streetscape on Main Street is a bit,
Like, yeah.
I was
But
say,
look, you're gonna be here for 4
minimalist.
days, start watching how many 18-wheelers come through.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
lot.
Yeah, when you don't have like proper street trees and sidewalks that are wide enough, I mean, even in spite of it though, like you know, it's not like, you know, we're taking pictures and, you know, like, oh, this is the best Main Street, but it's like, you can tell people are working hard. I love the vibrant colors, and I don't know how y'all feel about that, but just as an outsider, I'm like, oh, that's like trying to do something, little outdoor
They
seating.
really are, yes,
You know,
they
so
are.
you gotta give it to them. So imagine if you made just a little bit of improvements to it, I think people might wanna go down there and hang out. So, do people ever see people sitting out there on the little cafe or tables or?
No, but then they may be, and I'm just not going by when they are, you
Yeah.
know. But Brandon, you're down here a lot, so maybe you should answer that.
Yeah, I see people there, especially on weekends, taking photos in front of the murals, stuff like that.
Okay.
I see people bringing food to that little pocket park out there, eating.
Yeah.
All the businesses have a lot of good synergy. They'll go get a drink at everybody's, or they'll go to Braxton's, go shopping, and then they'll come in their day at the arcade or start at the arcade. But it's only like maybe a 2 to 3 hour day
Yeah.
versus when you go to Monroe, you spend all day there.
I see a lot of people at the town green,
Mhm.
they'll be sitting on that pavilion,
Yeah.
eating my lunch or something. I said, because I come up, my street dead ends right there. There's people there almost every time I come up.
Not just
People
weekends.
there.
Yeah.
Weekdays are pretty dead.
Yeah,
A lot of our business members are very low during the week.
it's always worrisome when I see like nonprofits that are in storefronts and stuff on Main Street. That's an indication that the rent's so low that it makes sense for them to be there. And it's usually not a high traffic kind of pedestrian sort of thing coming in, or sometimes if it is, like this is like some social services, it's like, okay, you know, this is a place where we want to be pedestrian friendly, but now we've got, you know, people coming in who are, you know, have a lot of need, and they're not there for, you know, shopping, like hanging out and doing things, and it can be a challenge, so. Okay, so Main Street, what about, we talked about this a little bit last night, and how do we incentivize people to do, to redevelop things, or to, you know, have some additional stuff going on, and we talked about if you allow it to be mixed use, then they get, you know, more square footage that they can lease out or whatever. And we were talking about it in the context of redeveloping parking lots and stuff, but when I look at a struggling Main Street like that has sort of land around it, and if, you know, the buildings aren't sort of specimens of, you know, architecture, have you guys thought at all about allowing for some
about that as a council.
Yeah.
And I think we're all in agreement, we're okay with that.
Okay. One thing that's neat is, you know, because even though you're building our masterpieces, they're neat and they're historic, and it's hard to do something charming these days when it's new for whatever reason. Even if you copy the old building, but you know, there are ways that you can, you know, sort of preserve the facade of what's there and make that the storefront. You can kind of build it around it, and things like that. So that might be kind of neat.
Brandon just, I keep pointing to Brandon, because he's got a building down there, and he added a second floor to it.
Yeah, yeah.
To save that old building, yeah, do that steel package.
Yeah.
You can't put weight on those walls, because
Yeah.
they're so old.
Why did you do it?
I love this town.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good
My
sign.
daughter's here, I want them to stay here.
Yeah, so you figure it out one way or the other. Perfect. That's like, okay, we'll be expecting big things from you when we make it easier to do even this. Now, what kind of challenges did you run into in trying to do that? Besides the physical challenges.
Be nice.
You go around the corner.
Fire code is tough,
Yeah.
even in old buildings.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have a 6-inch water line go to that side of the street. So we only built 99 occupants. So we had to build in a lot of dead space in there, because if we went over that, we'd have to have fire suppression. And I'd have to trench 6-inch water main all the way from past Melanie's house. All the way up to it. And it was just not financially feasible. But now, if I would've done that and paid for that, then everybody could have tied into that.
Right. What if the city were to do that? Because they wanted to.
And that's what I'm talking about, the
Yeah.
incentivizing people to do better and build better.
Yeah.
And the city's gonna have to kick in and contribute at some point.
Yeah, you hear about cities doing that kind of stuff for like industrial parks all the time. They like put in whole roads and all kinds of infrastructure to hopefully one day get some factory or warehouse or whatever. But now people are starting to realize the economic benefits of their historic core, their main street. It has its own, you know, maybe not dollar for dollar like an industrial park would, but when folks start looking at, you know, I want to put my business in this community, and my industrial business, where are my workers gonna want to live? They're gonna have a place to hang out, and like, oh, well, you know, Snellville's already got it all figured out, I'll just do something over there, I guess, you know, whatever. So there is a tie-in. You really can start to see, and especially because your downtown is so little, you know, it's not that big an undertaking relatively compared to some other places, you know, and so, you know, you can really see it as sort of like an amenity, in the same way that you can see a park or that. Good, well, maybe we'll get you to be able to fill up that place you have.
I'm not.
Hey, Brian, get that pipe in there and you help stir some more. Yes, sir.
I guess this applies. I've asked this to a
Come
couple of
speak
people.
up.
I've asked a couple of people this, but does it make any sense for downtown to be its own district, like with boundaries?
It's gonna have to be because of your noise ordinances and alcohol, it's gonna have to be its own district, I think.
But it's not currently.
It is.
It's downtown.
It's
But
an
it's
overlay.
only
It's not-
this street and half of that street.
It's not there.
Okay.
But we actually have a triangle in between the two major highways, possible.
Yeah. I remember the first time we were working in the road, we were looking at where the downtown boundaries needed to be and looking at some areas of possible expansion that made sense to expand it.
I like the difference between your noise and road city town, that's all separate, so. Here, I grew up 70 acres, 2 lanes from Evans, all the way to. This one intersection is probably the, and then, 6 on the highway. Really takes me.
Well, you know, the good news is that a lot of places have their main street as a state route, and they've, like, GDOT's kind of reluctantly letting people sort of reclaim some extent they're the heart of their community, and so maybe that's, you know, something to look at moving forward. But
talk about what affects the most people,
Yeah.
which is all the other stuff. And I know, Patty, you've had a lot of architectural, concerns about the architectural standards.
Yeah, downtown's easy, by the way. It's very easy to do. It's just obvious and, you know, people want it to be great. I think is why, you know, people focus on it so much. And that's why I was just pivoting. So what are your architectural thoughts? What kind of things are not working well?
I just, all our neighborhoods and side by side crack box houses and, you know, I'm sick of that. I call that high density, a lot of it is high density, a lot of it I just plain don't like. But it's the same old, same old, same old. And if you want, like Melanie just said, not repeat this all the time, you build for what you want to come into your city. And so far, we're not building, I don't think, in my opinion, what we, you know, want our city to look like overall. And somebody mentioned last night, like, some of the buildings that have been on 78 for years, like the gun, and the pool, I don't even know who mentioned that, the pool hall, or whatever you want to call it. But some of, we just need to, and I don't know that we have to have the authority to go in and say, you know, we need you to do something with your building, but I don't know if you said it or somebody said it last night, but once they have something they have to do, repair or whatever, then we can say, okay, now you have to, I mean, that can be in our ordinances. All that tacky stuff up and down 78 is bothersome. I mean, it just makes our whole city, you know, 'cause that's what most people travel is 78, and I just think it's eyesore for most of them.
Are y'all to the point, I hear general sentiment that everybody's kind of tired of the cookie cutter and the sort of like getting developers second best kind of stuff, and are you guys to the point you think economically that y'all can be pickier and a little tougher on what happens here?
Depends on who you ask.
Well, I give an example, I'm a locksmith, so I go into a lot of areas. I never knew that out on Piney Grove Road, there's a neighborhood, and the street is it's just a one small street, it's called Worth Avenue, and I'll tell you right there. I went into that neighborhood to do some lot work, shocked me, multi-million-dollar homes on 3 and 5 acre lots, and the homes that are built were sold before they were built. There are people with money that want to live here, but they don't want to live here because of what it looks like. There are no standards. We have catered to the low end of the spectrum for so long that that's what we've gotten. And so there is nothing for people. And I went to Monroe to change locks for a lady, and I asked her where she moved here from. She said Loganville. And this was in Monroe. I said, really? Why did you move from Loganville to Monroe? She said, well, we stayed in an apartment in Loganville looking for a place to live. And she said that there is nothing for sale in Loganville. Everything's for rent. That's our number one problem. You can't own in Loganville hardly anymore. Everything's a rental. And she said, so we got tired of it. And she said, so we moved to Monroe because here we could own a home. In Loganville, everything that came up was a rental. And she said, by the way, you need to tell whoever's in charge, and I didn't tell her I was on city council. She said, those apartments aren't doing Loganville any favors. She said, we had to get out as soon as we could. She said, the drugs, the crime, the loud music, all the problems that come with it. And I agree. Well, like Patty said, my motto has been build for what you want to attract. And we haven't been attracting what I don't think anybody in here wants to be surrounded with. So, it's like you said last night, the egg or the chicken. Somebody's got to go first.
Right.
And I think just to have these developers build a higher standard, I think they'll be able to.
Yeah. And I don't know what it is today, but I know the first time we worked in Monroe was 13 years ago or so, and I was shocked. They were at like 80% rental property.
Yeah.
Something wild. And there were like, there's 3 landlords in that 80%. What do y'all think? Is it the same now?
It's down to about 65%.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. But I guess my point is, don't be as concerned about, you know, whether or not you have a higher percentage of this or that, because we're looking at, you know, going forward, right? And so even though they have that high percentage of rental, they can still end up working to kind of get that down. But the other thing, I was trying to look up
Monroe City itself, or are you talking about the people that live
Both,
there?
yeah.
The people that live there, no, I don't think so.
Yeah,
Monroe may have some wealthier folks.
and Monroe operates basically on the same budget we do as far as incoming revenue and all that kind of stuff, and you just see the difference between what they're doing versus.
That's what I was getting at.
It's very, odd.
Yeah, yeah.
And I can't put my finger on why, except they have at least from the outside looking in,
Yeah.
they have a wonderful development manager, I don't know what to call her, but whoever comes up with all these ideas that
I
are
think his
just.
name is Brad.
Okay.
We got Logan Probst, probably the main.
Is it-
Yeah, city manager.
Somebody needs to get a lot of credit for what's going on in Monroe, because what they do is just so unique and so, you know, they got little people, fake people sitting around.
You talking about like, I know, it's a team effort though, like Sandy Daniels, the downtown development.
Yeah, y'all agree with me, because I'm on the outside driving through Monroe, but I think what you're doing is just.
It's a team effort.
It's good. It's good stuff.
Council, it's a lot of things.
It's good stuff.
And this isn't one person, it's a lot,
There's people with
a
a
lot
lot
of
of vision.
Everybody that I talk to in surrounding communities is like, oh, Monroe, we really haven't figured out, which is unusual, because apparently they're also not letting it go to their head, because a lot of times when the nearby community has things figured out, everybody's like, I don't wanna be them, even though they're like, where do y'all go on Friday night? Well, we go over there, you know? That's more of an attitude of the people,
Certainly, we're not here to this, to be better than you guys or anything like that. We're here to offer some, wherever we can, because like you can tell by my board in my office that things aren't always so great. I mean, my board's on fire right now with all kinds of silliness and nonsense and anything else you can think of. There's always something that has to be dealt with, and there's always new projects and old projects that have to be addressed, and so there's always something.
The thing is though, that one way or another, even in the midst of kind of things that probably maybe drive you nuts, people can go through and they see the good stuff, they're like, whoa, look at that, wow, look. Not every place has that, a lot of it's just, every place has just the frustrations and the successes, so, yeah.
Great things with them. And especially because it started out, I wasn't there around here then. Didn't y'all have like a lot of lighting on your buildings and just, trash and whatnot? And somebody came in.
It was empty, downtown was just empty, like 10 years ago, it was just empty. You didn't want to hang out there.
I mean, it's not like it was always this way. They
Yeah.
took something kind of like we're trying to do that was.
I had Mike Dash on the corner there, you didn't want to
Yes.
hang out there for 10 minutes,
Yeah.
And y'all have completely turned it around.
Well, Charleston used to be trashy too. Charleston.
Really?
Oh yeah, before Mayor Riley came in, he's not mayor now, but he was there for a long time, and it took decades, and he turned it around to make it the place where it is in Franklin. In the 80s, apparently, it was like biker bars and pool halls on Main Street, and
Somebody had a vision.
yeah, they're like, okay, that's one too many people got killed on Main Street. We're gonna do something different now. And so it can happen. But I've just been interested. You'll have a lot of peer communities that are doing good. We've been hanging out in Snellville, that's where our hotel is, and we, like Snellville Bad.
I lived for
Okay, tell me about that.
21 years ago.
Oh, okay.
I had a county in Central.
Yeah,
We're talking about two different counties.
yeah,
Walton County at the time, Warren,
yeah,
talking about the roads are trying to speed.
yeah,
We're living in one big counties, one big cities.
yeah.
Loganville is growing. Loganville sits right down, half Loganville is Walton, half part of Loganville's head.
Yeah.
As the expansion is going, it's more, Snellville is over expanded. They just recently built their downtown,
Yes.
but I don't think their downtown makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Lawrenceville makes much more sense.
Larson has a square.
Lawrenceville has a square, Lawrenceville has a seat.
It doesn't make sense in how it's laid out or that they have them.
Well, they built them a new apartments and everything, it's walking community.
Yeah.
But people are still driving.
Yes, but less.
They are putting homes on any 5-acre lot that they can find.
Mhm.
subdivision I used to live in, we just built a 30-home community on their spot. And, less than 4 acre lots. And in that county, I'm not talking about anything about it. It is traditionally overbuilt and finished. And this goes back 30 years. Like a big fucking problem. It really has. And then there's nothing left to do.
Yeah, well, and to your point, I mean, Snellville, I had the sense as we ate at that Mexican restaurant with all the vines and stuff hanging down right in the middle of their downtown, or at the edge of their downtown. And I had the sense that that was probably a bit much for y'all, like even if you're like, oh, we need to do something with our downtown, that's probably a bit intense. However, even in the areas of kind of their just sort of suburban strip highway, something about it was elevated beyond what I'm seeing around here. And even just that, I don't know how y'all feel about it, like that gateway thing that they got there, like when you're in Snellville, there's no question, you're not going to where's the sign. And it's like just a traffic signal, really, but there just is something
That was,
that's
that was the DOT project.
yeah, I
We
mean,
do that intersection.
Evermore CID.
Well, Evermore CID,
Yeah.
they went to DOT, we did that whole intersection.
yeah,
I think evermore did that signage.
yeah.
That used to be just 4 lanes.
The good news is that the DOT let them do something special there like that, what that cost, but,
Well, they have a self-tax.
For what? Okay. So, I also, Anna told me, we were talking about incentives last night, and however you feel about their downtown, we think that it was a public-private partnership, with the city, county, and the developer that was able to, transform that and give, did they have a downtown one before?
Snowball?
Yeah. So you can imagine that it probably has an overall positive impact on that community. They've got a downtown now, they've got economics, people coming in and shopping, doing all the stuff. And to your point, while it is a walkable area and people do still have to drive, they have to drive less than they did before. If they were just in an apartment complex out in the suburbs and they wanted to go get some Mexican food, they certainly couldn't walk to it, or to the library, or to whatever. So it's all relative. But, having that public-private partnership structure in place to give you whatever it is that you want, your version of that, might be instructive to how they accomplish that.
But to speak to what you're talking about, the only people you're catering to are the people that live in the grove, because I know a lot of people live in Snellville. They don't go into that area.
Why not?
It's been packed every Friday and Saturday since it opened.
It's the people that
I
live
live
work.
right there.
It's been packed, is that what
Pat,
you
she
said?
said exactly. So maybe some people don't like it, like if it, for instance, if, that Mexican restaurant, I don't know what we paid for our dinner, but I had the sense that it was more probably than the Mexican restaurant in the strip mall, But our experience of being there was great, we had a nice time, we were able to walk around out there, it was kind of different, and we will remember Snellville as a result of that place, right?
You'll remember positively, it sounds like.
Exactly, yeah, even though this also was good stuff. So those are the kind of things, like everything that you see, like when I point out something as like, well, that's interesting or inspirational, whatever, don't ever think that I'm being literal and like, oh, you should do that thing. It's like, okay, well, what did they do? What's your version of that, if anything, because there's always lessons to be learned in every community, that they're doing things, so sometimes the bad lessons that you go, don't do that, so. Do what?
Yeah, make Loganville local.
Yeah, exactly, that's what I keep telling us, the essence of Loganville, we can't, and no matter how much you like Monroe, we can't do Monroe.
Back in the day though, back when my family moved here in 1982. So back in the day, Loganville was the place to be, and Monroe, like you were saying, the buildings were empty, everything was
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah.
Loganville didn't grow properly. I think Monroe, when they got ready to grow, they go, don't do what Loganville did, right? And so then going, we screwed up.
Yeah.
How can we back up? How can we just let too much come in, too low quality again. So there's not much land left, so that's why I keep asking you, how do you incentivize people to fix things and make them better? Even existing neighborhoods, because you can't go in there because it's done now. So you can only go forward, so there's not a lot of land left. And so I know you're gonna talk about infill tonight, but there's not a lot of land left. So how do you make what you've already screwed up better?
Yeah, well, and that's kind of that exercise that we're doing last night of identifying what areas people are comfortable with seeing things be fixed, if you will. And we kind of, and then going from there, I think it's going to be real instructive for us. The other thing is, interestingly, I'm again not suggesting this whatsoever, but just to show you the extreme, like there are some communities around the country that have realized that the whole cul-de-sac thing and sort of disconnecting and all that is not a good thing to do, and they're actually retrofitting their neighborhoods. In some cases, you'll see there's not a house at the end of the cul-de-sac. That's easy. There's usually another cul-de-sac that's pretty darn close, and they'll connect them. But in some cases, like the city will buy the house that's at the, in the spot where you need to connect. Now, the neighbors go bananas, right? Because I bought this, because I don't know. But the next people who buy the house don't even think twice about it. In fact, they're like, oh, this is so great, I can connect through and whatever. So anything is possible, even something as close to home as that. The stuff on the highways and the places that people, besides whoever owns that piece of property in particular, but there's no like sort of community affection for it. That stuff's easy to deal with zoning wise, and then to your point, how do you make it happen is the trick. So I think ultimately, figuring out that balance of regulation and incentive versus just patience. Sometimes, unfortunately, you just have to be patient. And you go, dang it, like, you put that new code in place and it's been 10 years, and on 10 years in one day, it's time for somebody to do something with their business. But there are plenty of places where we work where they go, hey, you mean I can put my building closer to the street? Y'all are gonna make me have excessive amounts of parking that I don't need. I can do outdoor seating, I can do whatever, and the next thing you know, they're crunching the numbers and figuring out like, well, that's gonna improve my business. I wasn't planning on doing anything to my building for the next 5 to 10 years, but I'm gonna do that now, because that's better, that's gonna be better for my business. And then you start getting those things you get, one person starts to do something, everybody's like, know that happened. That's pretty cool.
Catches on.
Yes, and the other business owners, and there's always some that'll be stragglers forever and maybe never do it, but it's incrementally getting better and better and better. So, one of the things we talked about from a housing perspective last night was the idea of the bigger is better concept. Because bigger is more expensive and it's going to be maintained and not rented and all that. When you look at a place like Franklin, I was going to say, so like Franklin, right, where the downtown is super desirable, you can't touch a house for under $1 million. Somebody does a little cottage court of tiny houses in there. They like say buy one lot and an old house that somebody put up in the 1970s and take it down and put a cottage court in there and a little pocket park. 6 or 8 tiny houses. On a per square foot basis, they're going to be way more expensive than whatever the nicest subdivision you have. The outskirts is, no matter how big those lots are. And so one of the things that may help you all to focus on is that idea of a per square foot cost rather than a total cost. Because, ultimately it's hard for somebody to wrap their mind around, I'm equation, figure out, okay, well, what are we really trying to prevent? And, you know, like in Monroe, you know, they talk about these landlords, these three slumlords that have all these houses and whatever, and they're all falling apart, and, you know, we'll talk to people who live in those houses, and they're like, yeah, we don't like it either, but the jerk won't fix it up, and, you know, whatever. And so, a lot of times when people talk about, in terms of rental, they quickly start talking about the renter. But a lot of times the worst thing is the landlord. And so when you've got something that is nice on a per square foot, expensive on a per square foot basis, that landlord, they can't afford to let it fall to pieces. And there's also discussions about, you know, do you have, does it have to be, if you have a rental, you know, do you have to have a landlord living on premises or nearby or whatever? So there's some ways to think about that too. So, you know, what I fear is that comment about you can't age in place here. Now, I told you a story. We were working in Londonderry, New Hampshire, and when they fought for 1 acre zoning, and then that meant something, and then the whole community got to an age where they didn't want to or couldn't maintain their house unless they could afford mental health care. They had to leave the town because they had fought to keep everything smaller out. And so, you know, trying to find a way to make sure you all don't find yourself in that situation, or your only choice is to go to some, you know, assisted living in a small, or, you know, something like that. So that's just a cautionary tale as we talk about these things together. So rather than suggesting the solution, we identify the concerns and the goals, and then we can figure out what a good solution is. We're good on time. 15 minutes, all right. Anything that I talked about last night, because I was a bit rough on building design and quality and architectural stuff last night. Anything I said last night concerning anybody about, you know, just kind of, what about those images I showed of the National Home Builder, and these in one community and these awesome ones in this other community? Does that resonate with anybody?
Yeah, because, I mean, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
The last maybe 4 or 5 cycles of the city council has just approved everything.
Yeah.
And our code wasn't written in such a way. Now, the last few that we've had come through, we put a lot of conditions of zoning to try to compensate for a lack of a good ordinance.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, if you're talking to people, I don't know if you talk to all the council members, you probably heard a lot about how strict we want it to be, because we don't want there to be any questions. A developer comes into this town, he looks at that and he goes, oh wow, I can't make any money there. That's not the guy we want here anyway, right? So we're gonna weed those out naturally. We want the person who's gonna come here and build those quality products that look good, that, you know, have the long driveways and the garage, you know, that's what we want, so.
How do you define that though? I mean, I've sat in a lot lately, and it's like, we're gonna circulate the driveway, we're parking on the street, and when it comes to the things that make it a higher level look, like the awnings or the porches or the whatever,
Right.
that's where I have a hard time saying,
Well,
how to
because we
describe
don't,
that.
yeah, we don't have any architectural standards, and that's one of the things we're looking for.
It's one of the things that, and I've been here a long time, I agree with you, because I grew up here, but, one of the things early on, I was opposed to duplexes. Because where I lived, we didn't know what was gonna come in and rent them. So I came and did the same thing, I came to the council, but what we ended up with was we got the duplexes, but they were very, and they were very well maintained, and the lawn and the look, as the ones down at home. It turned out nice, but there had to be a standard in there, because they came in not wanting brick, they wanted to be cheaper. And the owner said you had to do brick, and then that was fine with us, and it has been fine. I was worried about the traffic, but that ended up being.
And it just kept a higher end clientele,
It
we
is.
never have any problem.
And I don't have a problem with like townhomes, I don't really, I mean, even apartments are fine, but townhomes, and subdivisions, but the look of them needs needs to be elevated, because a lot of them just look cheap and the same.
They use cheap materials
And what faces a lot of the highways are the backside, so the front side may look, but then the backside looks like you've got a bunch of salty boxes sitting along the highway.
Yes.
So I was thinking maybe some of the back needs to be as pleasing, maybe not as much, but as pleasing and as different as the front side, so that the people driving by go,
Yeah, no, I mean.
that's what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly, like the way that we think about it these days is, you know, unless, not even unless, I mean, sometimes even if, you don't usually see a house on like a big highway or whatever, but on some of these bigger streets that carry a lot of traffic, like, those streets will always seem gross and speedy so long as you treat them like sort of, we call it a car sewer, you know? And what people are doing, when you turn your back to the street like that, you said, this can never be good, right? But the way that we typically will do is you actually flip the house around, and that street is the street for those houses, but they are set back enough, there's sidewalk, there's street trees, all that stuff. So there's public improvement all over, even by the developer. But you start to create a streetscape so that when people drive down there, it feels great. You know, it feels like a nice street. Now, you may not, if enough traffic's going on the street, you don't want a bunch of driveway cuts going onto it. So that's where an alley would come in to access the house through your alley. And we've noticed y'all have to do that sort of back. And that was a very common thing in the 80s and 90s. People would flip their houses around like that, or even put up a really aggressive vinyl fence or something. And so, you know, we know how to fix that. But to your point, even if, and I'm not conceding that the driveway and all that stuff we talked about earlier is the way to go, but even if that was like whatever your preference is for perfect street, if you put a hideous looking building in the perfect location with exactly the streetscape you think is great, it doesn't matter. You know, if you went and you took, let's say, pick your favorite main street anywhere around here, and then let's say you took your least favorite strip mall, right, and you put it in the same spot, right on the main street, it's still going to be awful. You'll still hate it, you know. So the placement and all of that is important to some extent, but the design of the building, how it's articulated, all that stuff. Now, I have a question, and my team member who will be able to answer me isn't here yet, so I'll ask him later, but you all may know off the top of your head. Do you guys have any restrictions or inability to regulate architecture in the state of Georgia?
Oh, in the state of
Yeah,
Georgia.
Robbie, do you know about
Robbie,
that?
do you know?
Architectural restrictions, regulating architecture in Georgia, is that something you can do?
I mean, we have standards that exist for our Main Street overlay district, I mean, for a lot of our overlay districts.
Right now, we're not.
But we don't.
Necessarily for
Okay.
our regular, like our R16, those ones, no, are not. It's just mostly for commercial and overlays.
Yeah, the home builders association in Tennessee, North Carolina, a lot of different states have lobbied at the state level, and you basically can't regulate nearly anything.
And that's
with
what we're looking
architecture.
at this year.
What we have it in session right now, I think it's SB,
Yeah,
I can't remember the number. But they can start, it's doing, we wouldn't be able to control vinyl planning, something like that.
No, they don't want us to do this. The foundations and the garage locations are now what they're going after.
Yeah,
Now they
it's
don't
gonna
want to
be-
recess the garage anymore. They're calling it the, I forgot the creative word for it. I'm gonna call it the parking location of the vehicle inside the residence.
Yeah.
So they're using terminology, they're trying to use terminology called the garage, so we're going up with a new term.
Yeah.
In order to get around that, so I call it the.
Right.
The receptacle for the location of the vehicle.
Yeah. So if y'all want to go and like complain about things, show up at those state hearings, because to me, like I was just saying, like it doesn't matter if we get everything else right, if the building is ugly, and people, how do you determine what's ugly? Well, you know, there are certain things that you know, you can look around and you can say, okay, well, here are the common architectural styles that are in the community. We can do a visual preference survey. We actually have statistically valid information. We say that, you know, 98% of the people in this community prefer this building that looks like this, and you know, people don't want something that's very ultra modern or whatever, and you know, figure it out. And then you have, you know, measurable criteria that goes along with that. You know, when brick above it being visually supported, and little things like that, you know, the average person's not gonna know how to write down what those standards are. But if I point out to you, you're like, yeah, I knew there was something weird about that building. I didn't like, I don't know why, it felt weird to me. So,
How do you do
Yeah.
that, not go too far where you're impeding on someone's taste and right, you know?
okay,
Their own property.
so here's the thing.
Because I don't have a garage, but, I mean, I think.
Whatever do you do?
I don't know what I'm gonna do in about 10
She
years.
parks on the street, right?
No, I have a long driveway.
There you go.
But-
So, all right, so here's the way I think about it, right? And there's starting to be case law that supports this. So the design of things, of an individual's things, has an impact on the rest of the community, right? And so I started saying this to my dad years ago, you know, as the attorney, I was like, surely there's like a health, safety, and welfare, like mental health thing, and you know, that's what they're starting to do now. They're starting to actually use that strategy there. There's an economic consideration that goes along with it, right? So if every building, if nobody except for the owner or their architect likes modern architecture, I'm not picking on modern architecture, I'm just saying, and now they wanted to turn your whole Main Street into modern architecture, it could ruin their downtown, for instance, so they just went for it, right? And so it isn't just in the same way that you regulate an individual's many things, like the use of their property or whatever. Why is the thing that's the most obvious to everyone else the one thing that's sacred? And it assumes that the owner actually even cared. It assumes that they had taste, right? Sometimes they just go on uglyhouses.com and they download a plan and they go like, do this, and there's the third thing they came to, and they liked it better than the two uglier ones they saw before. Or someone doing a commercial business is, they're just like, oh, I just want the cheapest thing. There was no design consideration in the first place. So we're not infringing upon their right to express themselves or free speech in that way. But just think about all the things we do regulate. Why is that one something we're all afraid of? So ultimately, though, if you get in before the state changes those rules, typically, there may be some sort of grandfathering. So don't dilly dally about it if it's already being considered.
I thought it will pass this time, but
It's not gonna pass.
it's not gonna pass.
Yes.
I don't think it's even crossover these next
I
week.
mean, now it's threatening, everybody gets scared.
Yeah. Because you think about it, the Home Builders Association that lobbies for this, I don't think they make the case that it's some personal expression that they're concerned about. And we know, if they're being truthful, that's certainly not it.
We're starting to sell it though as affordability. We're encroaching affordability. That's how it started in Danny Trash.
Okay, so.
That's the buzzword now.
Yeah, that's all.
They're starting to say that we're impeding affordability. That's where it started.
Well, and to your point though, one of the things that we often will do is we'll say, okay, home builders, bring us your standard plans, right? And even sometimes when we're working on a private development project, we'll have, the developer will hire us, we'll do their plan, we'll make this great walkable community and all these things, and they're like, okay, now we've got these builders, and they show us what they're hoping to build, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, why do we even bother making great walkable towns? It's horrible. And so we'll take their plans and we'll mark them up, and we'll say, okay, well, if you took this and you moved this here, and here's a few simple things that you can do that don't cost any more money, do that. And they're like, well, yeah, but we already paid to have these plans drawn. I'm like, okay, well, sometimes you make mistakes too, So anyway, I keep encouraging people around the country. I'm like, okay, municipalities, planners, mayors, council members, like, I don't know who shows up at these hearings when the home builders are lobbying for this stuff, but I feel like not enough people do, because it seems to always pass ultimately. So that's my encouragement to y'all. Don't let it happen to Georgia. Georgia strong. What else?
How about HOA plan next to you, if you were having issues with
so far, there's communication with the home association, so we let them try to handle that part.
That's how been using it pretty much through his property, the retention.
The retention.
And he mowed it
We-
forever, you know. But then it got out of control, nobody took care of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So looking at rules, maybe other ways other than go through people's yards or something to get stuff, just make it easier on selling and buying homes.
Right.
Real estate agents, they're trying to sell you a home, they're not looking half the time at what you have to, we have homes that people bought, but they're in charge of the whole the retention pond is a part of their plat. So the HOA doesn't pay for it, that the homeowner has to. Maybe we have a lot of that fixed in our current code, so just wanna keep that in mind.
Well, I just heard you say HOA, so a lot of the problems in our community is the HOAs. Is there any way in the ordinance, because I know you don't have any control of that, is there any way that you can write specific standards to make these HOAs have certain requirements? Is that something that can be put into an ordinance?
What are they doing? Or not doing?
Well, I mean, I just hear from different people,
We have some great HOAs, by the way.
we
Some
do
of them
have
are
some.
very own it though.
Yes, but I mean, like, just to say move forward, like, cause I understand that there'll be an HOA at this new, townhouse community over on Tommy Lee Fuller. But everybody's worried about, are they really going to, cause it's all rental, right? Are they going to hold the standards and everything? And a lot of times an HOA, it only takes, what, 80% of the vote to change the regulations and things like that. So if you've got a company that's owning 80% of the rentals in there, they're gonna control the HOA. But is there any way to work, cause you've asked us a lot about the HOAs, cause you say they're not, the city can't hold them to any standard.
That's the big thing, and in council, we'll come up with a list of things, and it's like, we are fooling not only the citizens, but the owners, because we cannot enforce it, and yet we keep acting like we can. And I think that's a bit misleading to everybody, because we can't go in and tell a subdivision how to, do whatever they're doing. The only thing we might have a control over would be the streets.
Do you guys do development agreements?
Yeah.
So if you do a development agreement, that's a legal binding thing between you and the developer, in which case you could have enforcement authority to, you probably have to sue them, I don't know.
If the developer gets out, once it's developed and turns it over to the homeowners, is that agreement still in force?
Yeah.
Just curious.
Yeah, it would roll over, to whomever it is. But, ultimately, if there are things that the HOA is supposed to do, or that you allowed them to do X in their development because they agreed to do Y, so then you just have that be a regulation, something they're required to do, that you have authority to like.
I don't know, I think that would be great.
I need to know more specifically, like examples of what kinds of things that y'all are worried about, or people that drop the ball on.
Well, we're saying quite often, don't we, Brandon, about, you can only have 10% rentals in the subdivision, 20% rentals. I don't know how much control the city legally has over that type of agreement.
Yeah.
Monitors it.
That's hard to enforce.
Yeah.
That's hard to enforce as a city
Yeah,
and
exactly.
HOA.
You don't know, unless you see an LLC,
Right. Isn't there some way to look at the tax roll?
you can't.
Yeah, it takes some monitoring. Maybe, I don't know how y'all are with AI around here, but maybe that's something that the task for an AI agent to.
We don't believe in using technology. We
Oh,
still
we
have,
don't
we
know
still
how.
handwrite most of our stuff.
That'd be it on mine, we don't know how to.
We just now started taking credit cards a few years ago, so come on now.
Can we tap? Well, something to consider, not that y'all would need to learn how to do it, but some people in the city would, could set that up, and it'd be so easy, to do something like that. And those, honestly, those little things where, when a business is considering, you know, like we talked about the industrial people or, you know, whatever. And you guys have an economic development person?
Not anymore.
So we have the Walton County Economic Development, but that doesn't really deal with what you're talking about. We have the Downtown Development Authority, but they're only in the downtown corridor, the small area.
Where I was going with that is just somebody or some way y'all can brag about it, because it's, something like that is very simple, but it sends a message like, oh yeah, we're up on things, you know, could be helpful. And, you know, it's where things are going, so. All right, so we're over by 5 minutes. Tonight at 6 o'clock, we are going to talk about infill development, redevelopment, infill, and so come prepared, bring friends, carpool. We don't want to make traffic here. 6 to 7 tonight, and yeah, it's been very helpful. Thank you for taking
And
notes.
you're here all day for people to walk in
Yes,
and
we're
talk to
here
y'all.
all day. Like, literally, that's our office is set up over there in the corner, and we'll just be hanging out, working on y'all's, things. We'll be sketching on some plans. We've already started actually, based on what we heard last night, and so that'll be fun for y'all to see on Thursday evening as well. So thanks for y'all's time.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.
All right. So what brand is your tripod?
Walmart.
Walmart. Literally?
Yeah. Phone, Walmart.
And it has the bendy thing. Or is that an add-on?
This came with another attachment that I got with a different stand,
Yeah.
and so they're all interchangeable. They just screw together. This is one piece, but this piece screws on the head. I could have this swivel head either mounted there or mounted right here.
Yeah.
But
Can't believe being that high is more top heavy and then fall over.
if I'm outside, like doing the concerts on the green and the wind's blowing, I can't have it extended all the way out because it even though it's got stabilizing control on the phone, it will wave all over the place and all.
Fall over?
Well, it probably would.
What if you got some of those little landscape fabric staples, those big, this big silver, like a little piece of metal, and just.
Yeah, but I have to be on the move, so.
Okay.
And the bottom, actually, the feet go farther out.
Okay.
This slides down all the way to here, and that's
Oh wow. Okay.
to about out there, makes it more stable.
Yeah, I'm always like recording a kid's soccer game or some, choir performance or whatever, and I'm just like, my arm, like trying to hold it, and then I can't focus on what I'm watching, and so I've been looking for a tripod.
Let me close out real quick, and I'll have a conversation about what I was just thinking about. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for this session, and we'll be back at 6 this evening, between 6 and 7 for the afternoon session. And y'all remember, be safe out there, be good to one another, do something kind for someone, and y'all have a blessed day.